Ok. Bonjour à tout le monde. Du coup, s'il vous plaît. Ok, du coup, effectivement, on reprend avec la deuxième conférence d'aujourd'hui. Du coup, c'est Toto que vous avez déjà connu lors de la présentation des ateliers, qui va nous faire une conférence sur affordable housing in Berlin. Et donc, effectivement, ça sera plutôt une rétrospective par rapport à, effectivement, un peu l'histoire. Je vais... Si, que je trouve ça. Enjoy.
Is it working? Yeah. So, hi to everybody. So we had lunch, and maybe we are a bit tired. I will try to tell you a story about the city where I live in, and yeah, it will be two parts. So first one, this little story about Berlin, how after the war, the market of the housing changed and evolved. And then something about the present situation and maybe examples of the practice. If you're curious, you can make me questions about, yeah, how we build today there, and I will try to answer to your questions. And yeah, I hope you don't fall asleep, guys. So we start for Berlin, a city in ruins. So what happened? It was 1945, Second World War was over, and Berlin was completely destroyed. It was like 40% of the buildings were just destroyed, especially in the last part, like between April and May, there was a huge battle to get Berlin, and like 80,000 soldiers, Russian soldiers died, 90,000 German soldiers, Nazi died in this battle, and finally got taken in May 1945. This year we celebrate 80 years. It would be a bit strange because there will be a big celebration about Russian old people there in Berlin. And in this time it's kind of, yeah, interesting to see what will be there. And yeah, Berlin was completely like destroyed, like ruins. And yeah, 600,000 apartments were destroyed, and a lot of homeless all around after the war. And yeah, people were leaving the city or just died. And yeah, 2.8 million remained in the city in May 45. And yeah, most of the city like was ruined and was necessary to rebuild, to make places for people to live. So it was not about social housing, it was about surviving, no? So the post-war housing crisis, the first problem was to remove all this rubble, because entire streets were like in this picture, that is actually is not Berlin, this one, yeah. You can guess which city it is. And so entire streets were rubble, were just bricks, and there were no men, not that many men survived in the city. So there were this beautiful picture of women that I found on the internet. It's about the Trümmerfrauen, that means the rubble women. So they look like my friends, like they can be like the mother of my life. They're super like cool women, like, you know, they were cleaning the bricks and reusing them, but it's all bullshit. It's just like a narration, because in reality, there were not these beautiful, strong women rebuilding the city or cleaning the streets and trying to reuse the bricks. There was just a narration, because at the end, there were some women, but also a lot of war prisoners, male workers, and forced people to clean the streets. So sometimes the history tells us something that it's not always true. So what happened in this big need of housing in 1945 is that they started to use what they had. So for example, this is the Fichte Bunker in Berlin. And yeah, it was first a gasometer. So, you know, there's probably also in Paris, like this big structure for gas purpose. Like there's also, yeah, very typical in that year. And they first transformed in a bunker during the war, and then was converted into emergency housing, because there were too many people living in the streets. And also in those years, it was 1946, yeah, 1946, Hans Scharoun, the famous architect, developed with his friends, other architects, in 1946, developed a cool plan. It was like, okay, we have a city in ruin, so let's make a very modernistic like floor plan. So we divide the city into sectors. We make beautiful highways that connected the sectors. We don't use the public net of transporting like the tram, the metro. We just make all new. We almost raised the city down. And of course, this plan was not accepted because it was considered utopian, but also open a debate about what's the future of the city could have been. So in the next years, we are, beginning of the 60s. Berlin, as you know, this is also something that I experienced, like when I was born, beginning of the 80s, I remember that it was the Cold War, the world was divided into two blocks, and 1989, the Berlin Wall just fell down. And with it, a lot of believing that East could have been the future, all this utopistic idea from Eastern Europe that could have been like an alternative model just fell down. And what I experienced is that when I went to Berlin for the first time, I was there like, what is the wall? I want to check what remains of it, of the story. But people of your age, like born in the beginning of 2000, even maybe you are not from Berlin. I don't know, there's somebody from Berlin, I don't think so. But I mean, young people in Berlin, they're not interested at all in this story. They don't know even that the city was divided, some of them. They're really like so far away from it. There is a big way just forgetting this part of the story. And I think it's very fascinating. So what was happening about almost 15 years after the war was like the city was divided into two parts. No, there was the western part with that it was just an enclave. It was just a little like area surrounded by a wall, and there was the western part connected to the rest of the East Germany, to the DDR. So one of the first big attempts to think about housing, I use the word affordable housing and not social housing because it's a bit more inclusive. Like when we talk about social housing, we think probably about something that it's paid by the state, no? So I have a low income, so I get I just put myself in a list and I will get an apartment from the state. So affordable housing is a bit more inclusive, and that was, for example, the case of Interbau, because, we see in the next picture, so the coolest people in the West, you can recognize, this one with the big nose, it's Le Corbusier. And this one with the horrible jacket, in my opinion, is Gropius, is German. So, we need to forgive him for his taste. So all the coolest guy there, no, in the West were just invited in Berlin. Wait, it was when, I think it's written there, 1957, Interbau. So they were invited to Berlin, and they gave them a nice area close to the Spree, to the river, to develop some cool projects about housing, because still end of 50s, there was this huge need of building houses for people. So they made this high-rise building, like 4 or 5, at the end there were 5, 5 Turme, so tower building, and also down there, a lot of other intervention. It was like a catalog of the coolest practice, and actually it's still there, and it still works. It's not that bad, but of course was not that much related to the context. It was like empty space in the city center. We build something new. We show some beautiful practices, and that was like a bit of the propaganda of the West, no? We are the West, we are cool, we have the future, and the nice architects are playing a role. And on the other side, in East Berlin, also there was the propaganda. and but way more socialistic. So they developed this project that it was called at the beginning. This is the beginning of it. It was called Stalinallee, because, yeah, obviously. And now it's called differently. It's Frankfurter Allee. We changed the name. Stalinallee. Now it's Karl Marx Allee. In Berlin, we have Karl Marx Allee and Karl Marx Straße. We have two of them. That remains. Because Stalinallee and also Leninallee, they changed the name. I would have kept Leninallee, but yeah, they decided to remove that. So Stalinallee, for Stalin, was this huge kind of neo-classic style of high-rise building also. They have also this super modernistic, this is the Kino International that is still there. Now they started this year, the renovation. It will take 4 years or so, but it's super beautiful. I went there for one of the last movies. So they made in the East, also they wanted to show to the world, we are from the East, we are doing a cool project. So they did this big road, also using modern techniques like precast concrete to showcase, yeah, exactly, the strength and prosperity of the socialistic state. And of course, in the East Germany, there was Stasi, there was a dictatorship, but still, there were some good in this socialistic organization of the society. So what happened was that the easiest and quickest solution to build a lot of houses for people was the Plattenbau. So was ist ein Plattenbau? So Platten means flach, means like plate, like kind of. And bauen means to build. So it's just this thing, maybe you understand. This thing, and was made in a factory, so inside. Maybe you know what I'm talking about, because also in France, maybe you studied at university this, because also in France there was a huge prefabrication in those years. There was the golden years of social housing, golden years of housing. So everywhere in Europe, we were building a lot, and we were using a lot of these systems because they gave the possibility to just produce the building outside, like a Lego, no? And then to bring them to the construction site with big cars and build this very not various buildings like that. This is in Alexanderplatz, it's still today there. And yeah, the idea behind this system is that we can build a lot and we can build quick. But of course, it has also some contra, this idea of building. First of all, because it was a bit boring, okay? Not so many variations were possible. And second of all, because also to build this way, to build quick and to build like with a big mass production also brought us to other questions. So, for example, to make all like that, it means you need more metal inside of this, instead of making just pillars, so you need less metal. If you make this in concrete, reinforced concrete with metal, you need more. And also for the joints, when you want to join together in the Lego, like you see there, when you want to join them together, you need more metal to connect the parts. So it was not sustainable, even if was quick and was mass produced. So again, mass production doesn't mean equal sustainability. Can be, but it has to be done in a wise way. So what happened this is Lenin. They just cut the head of Lenin in the 90s. They destroyed his statue. They cut the head and they bury the head in a Wald, in a forest outside Berlin. And I think, I don't want to say bullshit. I don't want to say, but in beginning of 2020, they just take it out of the ground because it was buried for 30 years, the head of Lenin. So the approach in the East, actually in the back you see Leninplatz, then today it's called Platz der Vereinten Nationen, that means ONU, like United Nations Square. And there is a very big Plattenbau there, and it's still I think, very interesting. So in the East, Plattenbau was made by the state. So the state invests a lot of money to do this mass-produced building in the factories and give houses to the working class. In Berlin, you can see today, you can really go by car and drive through this huge complex of buildings with thousands of apartments. And it's the same there in Poland or in Moscow. It's all the same. They look all the same. So that was the East. And they managed to build in less than 20 years almost 2 million of apartments to solve this problem. So they produced a lot of apartments. And yeah, most of them, they were Plattenbau or plural Plattenbauten. And yeah, East Berlin skyline, it's really like that. So let's go to the other side, to the cool side, to the west side. There, you can see they're still the same. I don't see a big difference between those Plattenbauten and the other one I showed you before. So the idea in the West was to make, to give more space to private and to cooperative housing. So to achieve more architectural variation, but about Berlin, what was done, for example, this is called Märkisches Viertel. This is in the north of Berlin. So you have this big complex, but yeah, you have colorful people with nice dogs, but at the end was the same. So the quality of this cheap and quick way of building was the same in East and West, and was like a rational way to solve this problem of housing in a city that, as I told you before, was completely destroyed and divided into two slices. So the social housing policies, I can go also a bit, from 60s to 80s. So there were two different policies. So you can imagine in the East, this is East Berlin, still today, pictures. So in East Berlin, they were given by DDR, so was considered like a fundamental right of humans to have a place to live. So the government, they owned the majority of housing stock. So the private property was not so present in the socialistic society. So they own the apartments and they were giving them to people for really low costs, like low miete, low rents. And because as I said, housing was considered a fundamental social right, like education, healthcare, and that was in the East. In the West, we had the free market. So do you know this one? This is famous. I studied at university. Okay. So this is Eisenman. This is House on Checkpoint Charlie. It was made in between 85 and 86. It's a very iconic building in a checkpoint Charlie, that is one of these holes in the wall where you can pass through East and West. And so in the West, they were building also a lot of projects. For example, this is also Cottbusser Tor. If you've been there in Berlin, you probably passed through Cottbusser Tor. It was started in 1973. They needed a lot of time to build it. And it's really like a big complex. And in the 90s, there was very neglected place. So drug dealers, and was a no-go zone, Cottbusser Tor. You can remember about that because I will talk about this in 5 minutes, in 5 slides. So in the 60s, there was also, as I said before, the golden age of social housing. So in Germany, in West Germany, the policy shift to a more market-oriented, but still there were a lot of subsidies introduced. Also from Willy Brandt, it was a politician in Germany. Also the airport is entitled to him, that really tried to make significant reforms to make the life of people better. And it made possible to invest a lot in that direction to create social housing in Berlin. Then what happened? We are in the end of 70s, beginning of 80s. Then, as we know, Berlin Mauer, the Berlin Wall, just fell down, 1989, and there was a huge party. Like, this is not that. I didn't want to put a picture that it's with the wall, the people breaking the wall. This is the Love Parade that in the 90s was super cool. Now it's not that special anymore, also because something happened in the past. There was also a big problems related to the Love Parade, but in the 90s was one, I was too young, but there was one of the coolest thing, because imagine a city divided into two, like where half of it was just, you can even buy the clothes you want to buy because they were given by the state. And then just you open this city and it's just all open. It's like the hope you have in the beginning of 90s in Berlin was something that probably in Europe, I will not experience, probably, we don't know. But so the wall just fell down. And let's talk about the housing market. So what happened? First of all, Berlin, okay, when I was a child, I was thinking that there is Germany, this kind of nation in Europe, somewhere in the north, and Germany was divided into two pieces. Berlin was exactly in the middle and was cut in two slices. So half was with the west, half was with the east. But of course, my child thought was wrong, because Berlin is in the east of Germany. So the city was not just cut into half, but was surrounded by a wall. So West Berlin, as I said before, was an enclave. So a little state, a part of another state, inside of a bigger state that was the East Germany. So this wall was not in the middle only, was also going in the countryside, was like super long, cutting two airports inside of it, and forests and lakes, and was very big. But the well-known part of the wall, and also the most important part for our story today, was the part that was in the middle. So in Berlin, the typical German also that, the central quarter of the city is called center, like Mitte. So the name of the quarter is like Mitte. So in Mitte, the city center, it was just cut into two. So imagine, 1990, you have a city with two different city centers. So the city center of Berlin West was a bit more south, was Charlottenburg, and the city center of Berlin East was a bit more north, was Pankow. And along the wall, from east and west, was the periphery, was the Cottbusser, was those places where nobody wanted to live because they were close to a wall with military on one side and with nothing on the other side. But then imagine these very horrible neighborhoods with like drugs and danger. You remove the wall and they are the city center again. So imagine the value of these areas increased from 0 to 8,000 euro per square meter. So it was crazy. So what happened at the beginning of the 90s is that entire parts of the city, especially in Mitte, in Friedrichshain, in this central area, in Kreuzberg too, this central area was completely a squat. Like entire roads, like Rigaer Strasse, they made there like a squat every 4 buildings, there was a squat. Occupied houses, people coming. A lot of people were going away from East Berlin because it was like, we want to go back to our families, or we want to go to the West Germany to find better conditions. So Berlin was, again, losing people, and a lot of artists and poor people and people from all over Germany were going to Berlin, occupying the street. But the point is that, of course, they were not the only one that wanted those buildings. So these nice people, I found this picture on the internet, it's super cool in my opinion. So after the German unification, this huge, very good quality land attracted a lot of investors. So they were thinking, why to leave this central part of the city to these poor squatters, we have the right to buy them, we have the right to kick them out. And so the city, at the beginning of 90s, the city owned a lot, like 30% of the housing there was owned by the city, was just public. But then, in few years, it reduced by half because it was bought by those companies. And of course, that's what happened. And it's still happening today. They're still destroying beautiful realities because they want to build their more expensive apartments. But the question is always, why was possible that? So the point is, at the beginning of the 90s, both West and East Berlin, these big companies, they were owned by the state, but they needed to make money because the quality of, especially in the East, the quality of the building was not that good, and also the money the state was making with these apartments was not that high. So the idea was to give back to the tenants the apartments. So the state offered to the tenants the possibility to buy their apartment. But of course, they didn't have money, not all of them. So in the West, slowly, they were buying their apartment back, but of course, not all of the apartment got bought by the tenants. And in the East, you can imagine, they were not having money. So in order to make the maximum profit in a short period of time, they sold entire parts of the city to big companies that they were not public anymore. They were private. So the mega landlords just arrived in town. So with mega landlords, I mean these 5 or 6 companies that they own more than 100,000 apartments in Germany. And if the wealth, if the property is in the hands of few companies, then of course they rule the market. And we were saying that I was saying that in a socialistic state, there was less freedom, there was no private property. But what happened when the private property is owned by just few people? Happened the same like loss of freedom. Because then, for example, this is Vonovia. Vonovia and Deutsche Wohnen, they are 2 of the biggest companies in Germany. In 2021, they just merged, and now they own approximately 500,000 apartments nationwide. And there were, of course, a lot of attempts to fight against it. I found also this picture. It's from Pankow, where I live. And it says, do you understand what's there? No, not at all. Me neither when I arrived there. So, bitte kauf unsere Häuser, sonst tut es Deutsche Wohnen. So please, Pankow is the kind of the state, like the public sector. Please buy our apartment, otherwise it will be done by Deutsche Wohnen. Deutsche Wohnen is another of these big companies. So these mega landlords is not the only problem in the housing market in Berlin, because of course gentrification is not done only by mega landlords. Also us as private users. Yet when we go to a city, we want to go to a nice Airbnb, and we are ready to pay a lot of money to stay in the Airbnb. But we forget, I think you have the same problem in France. I don't have to talk a lot about that. That if we put all the apartments for tourists with money, then there are no apartments for artists, for students, for my friends, that they are not like all architects and they need affordable houses. So what is happening in Berlin is that only in 2023, and I checked twice because I was very scared about this, but it's true, 20% more was the raise of the rents in Berlin in the durchschnittlich, medium. In some places was not that high, but in other places it was even higher. So what we are facing in Berlin is that since in the beginning of 2010, Berlin was still a city with very affordable housing. So you could have rent, yeah, that's crazy for Paris. You could have rent a 2-room apartment, like 50 square meters in 2010 for 300 euro in the city center. So it was like very affordable. And now with 300 euro, you don't rent anything in Berlin. So there is a huge problem about affordable housing, and people are kicked outside of the city. And also not only people, but also the commercial activities, because the rents are crazy. And now even if you want to go to a restaurant or so, the prices are higher because they pay more rent. And the clubs, like part of the scene of the city, they are moving outside. They are just, but still, I can say, I don't want to be too pessimistic because it's still alive. It's like there is a way to go against that, and it's our responsibility to go against that. So I just wrote here something about the a referendum that was done in 2021, where we asked, some association asked the city to buy again the apartments from these big companies. And of course, most of the people were in favor of that, but still nowadays, after 4 years, there's no law about expropriation of apartments by the state. And also there is another law, the Mietbremse, like the rent break, that was introduced in the 2015, that is not really effective because it's hard to give rules to a market that is completely open, no? So to give rules, it's very complicated. But to go against this market, to act against this, it's, I think, our responsibility, because just to tell, oh, the city is gentrificating, but then I rent my apartment on Airbnb, or I just do other practice that they're not so helping the city. So it's a bit this not so, come dire, it's a bit of a hypocrisy, no? So let's talk a bit about today, because today there are still a lot of interesting interventions in the city in a small scale and also on bigger scale that are going into a direction of a sustainable city, of community-oriented city and building. And I found this one is like Nettelbeckplatz in the city center. So again, it was there was like middle of 2010 that a housing cooperative just decided to take an existing building and to build a new part of it and to also renovate the old part, but inspired by principle of building a community there, so integrating the previous tenants with the new people going there, and also trying to do new constructions inspired by energy-saving principles, and yeah, that will not kick out all the residents, so keep the rents low, but improving the quality of the building and of the new construction, and also giving community room, like common space, where the people can meet and create this sense of community. And the existing people, they were also asked to participate in this process. That it's something, it's a practice that is very common, but it's not always done, because it's easier, no, to just, I go there, I raise down, I build a new one, fertig. So this is the building. It's doesn't look like the coolest thing in town, but the project is working quite well. So then I found another example. This is Schumacher Quartier in Berlin-Tegel. So this is another intervention. It's in the old airport of Berlin, like Berlin-Tegel in the north. And yeah, they want to build there. It's kind of maybe half an hour from the city center, and they want to build there, I read the description here, it's like more than 5,000 homes for more than 10,000 people, together with, they said, no, because it's funny the way to describe that, all of this is there for everyone as well, because Schumacher Quartier combines different forms of construction and use. So they say that they want to do there 2 universities, so you can see the structure of the airport. So this is the 1-2 lane for landing for the airplane, and then all the area around, there is a lake, there is a canal there, so it's a very beautiful area with a lot of potential. Up north is a forest and lakes, and it's not too far away from the city center. So they say that they want to do there a big intervention of, this is the former airport and the main building, and make there a huge intervention that is inspired by the principle of, as I said before, the participative processes to integrate different kind of tenants, and also to build with sustainable materials. That's on the paper, so let's see what will happen. They plan to start building in the late 2020, so not yet. And okay, so the first part of my presentation is over, and I hope I gave you some inputs about how a city can change and evolve in a particular moment of the history. And if you want now, I can go a bit deeper in what we do, at least what is my experience as an architect in Berlin doing social housing. I arrived there like more than 10 years ago, and yeah, I was doing mostly social housing and schools, so something that it's sometimes a bit boring because we don't have huge budget, we don't do super cool projects, but it can be useful for the city. And what I want to show you as a first and only project, just one, so it's the very last part of the presentation. So it's a project called, actually it doesn't have a name, it's just the name of the street, it's Badener Ring, and the project code is BAD. So I started in January last year, this project. So your project is bad. I was like, what the fuck? Really? Okay, bad project for me. So this is, the bad project was built in the 30s. And this is, I don't know if you recognize it. It's a picture from the sky, but of course there was no satellite, so they were using airplanes to make those pictures. And it's super cool. If you see the big one, there is a clock there and other crazy little things that in order to put all the pictures together. Why I'm showing you this picture is that this project, actually Badener Ring is this one, this road is Badener Ring. So this project is different than the others because they decided that this one has to be protected by the Denkmalschutz, so the historical building law. They said this building has to be protected because the shape of it, with these 6 slabs, like 6 fingers, and one in the middle, is a very peculiar shape, so we need to protect it. So to the professional practice, it means this building is Denkmalgeschutz. So it means everything we want to do there, nowadays it looks like that, everything we want to do there. For example, we want to change this window. We need to ask for the permission. So it's extremely complicated in the practice when a building is protected. And it's a first aspect that, one of the first aspects we have to consider when we make a project in this kind of existing buildings, renovating buildings from the 30s or even more recent. So this is one aspect that we have to consider in the practice. And another aspect is the tenants. So let's say in this complex, actually the apartments are quite good. So the ceiling is almost 3 meters high And in the modern standards, we barely have this quality. So 295, the ceiling. The apartments are big. You have 5 rooms apartment with a lot of space, still for affordable prices, or even 2 rooms, even 2 rooms is the smallest there. So the point is, this building is cheap, is central, is still of good quality, and so it's full, so there's no empty apartments. So imagine the landlord, the property of this building just comes and says, it's too ruined, so this is a good facade, but you can still see here, it's a bit broken, a lot of reparations all around, all the technical equipment is old, so it has to be changed. So apparently, we are doing a good intervention for the tenants because we are telling them we make you nicer bathrooms, we make you a nicer facade, you will pay less money to make it warm in winter because it will be better insulated. But the people who live there, in general, they don't like us. They just say, no, I don't want to have my apartment renovated. First, because I don't care. I don't want to pay 5% more rental in month because there is an increase of the rental if you renovate a building, of course. So I don't want to pay 50 euro more because I don't have money. So stay away from me. Stay away from my apartment. I want my old ruined apartment. I don't want you to come. So that's a big aspect to have to deal with the tenants because they are there. They don't want to move, but they are forced to move. So, and it's also true that the company that owns this big building, usually they can afford good lawyers, and the people living there, they can't. So they manage to move them and to move them back. But sometimes it's very complicated. So the tenants is a delicate theme, and at the end, I was also asking myself, what are you doing? It's like, it's your practice. Why are you working for these people? To be honest, I also consider the aspect that if we don't intervene on this building, it will just be worse and worse. Like, there are problems that they have to be fixed and they need an intervention. So it's something that, again, there's not one truth. So there is the truth coming from the people living there. There is the truth coming from the people, they own the property and they want to improve the quality of this property. And there is also our point of view. So what are we doing with our practice? So one of the things that is necessary or seems necessary at the moment is the Schadstoffe and the pollutants. So the way they built in the 30s and the way they keep building in the 50s and in the 60s, they use materials full of pollutants, full of harmful substances. So the first thing when you want to do a renovation of these buildings is to remove these pollutants. And the one that they love it, they really love it, in the 60s, in the 70s also, and in the 80s, in Italy, full of it, and probably also in France, it was the amiant. So it's everywhere. Like, even, you think here, this is asbestbehaltig. So if they, in the 70s, they were just adjusting a bit the walls, they were using some material full of amiant. So even that, if you want to do a complete renovation, you have to remove, and that's a huge amount of money. And also, ecologically, where to put all this material. So it has a high costs also in terms of how to put all this polluted material that you don't need. So it has to be clean, it has a long process. So this is another topic, no? That when we use materials in a building, we should consider all the life circle, because in the 50s, in the 60s, they thought, yeah, let's put amiant, it's cheap, it's good properties, let's put it. But then they realized, no, actually it has a huge cost. So what do we do usually is to find a way to deal with the tenants, then understand what is polluted and has to be removed. And then a typical intervention is what we did also in Badener Ring, is to change all the shell of the building, as you can easily understand. No, in this project we reduced the impact of almost 35%. So the need of energy rose like in a significant way, and the way we did was with a new roof, and they also integrated some solar panel into it, and also the new facade that before was this, like, there was like already some intervention, but I took this picture because this one, they already removed all the layers, and you can see the old window and the old walls, you see between like straws. So in the past, they were in the 30s, this is from the 30s, this straw, or I don't know, it's grass, I don't know the exact name of it in English, but they were using materials easy to find on site and also very natural. And not only for insulation, also for the floors, so they were like full bricks for the walls, then they were having wood structure for the floors, and for the hanging ceiling, they were using also straws again, and also for the dividing walls, but probably you know that. So what we did is to remove everything and to put rock wool. That it's a very good material because it doesn't contain any poison, it's very stable, doesn't burn, it's kind of natural and so on, but actually it's not 100% true, because also it has a lot of problems, the usage of it. First of all, it's very expensive. Second of all, when the building, when we have to change it again, they write in their website that you can remove, you can wash, and you can reuse, but in reality, nobody washed it. It just goes straight to the Mülltonne, to the Entsorgung, to the trash. So it produces a lot of pollution if you build that way and then you want to change it again. So the life, again, to make a sustainable building is not only about saying we reduce 35% of the usage of energy, it's also about building for the future. So with materials that have a real low impact and in all their circle. And then, yeah, as I said, we considered some aspect, we changed the shell of the apartment, and then also the toilets. So all the pipes inside of the building, this is the typical intervention on a renovation of an affordable housing project. So we just remove all the old pipes that are also not anymore good for several reasons, and we do all this internal functioning part of the building new. So this is more or less what we do. And it's 3, so if you have questions, I would be happy to answer to you.
Thank you very much. Do you have some question? In English, please. No? No question?
That's so beautiful.
Oh.
Thank you for the presentation. So, do you think that with the situation of wars all around that we're having, like Ukraine and Israel and everything, there could be another Berlin effect of a reconstruction? Like that it was like a playground for architects where they could experiment with the private investors and everything? Or is this system, this effect not suitable anymore for nowadays?
You mean in Berlin or in general?
No. If we need to reconstruct another city somewhere else, would it happen the same way as it happened in Berlin at that time? Because they needed to reconstruct everything very fast, and so they had.
I have no idea. I mean, what's happening in Europe, let's talk about Gaza then, no? It's like now it's full of destroyed building. People are trying to go back, but they don't have anything. Like the picture I showed at the beginning, it's Gaza. It's exactly this one, yeah. And there is a big need of building houses for people, of building everything for people, because for several reasons, something happened there. But a part of the reasons that everybody can have his own opinion or her or their own opinion, the point is that people died there and they want to go back to their houses that don't exist anymore. So we heard a bit, no? There's somebody saying we make there the expensive, beautiful seaside of rich Israeli people, or we make new houses for people that they can't pay for that. So the point is, in that moment, in that political moment, I'm not an expert, and I don't know what can be the future scenario, but I know that after the war, there will be a reconstruction if the humanity survives to a war, and there will be a huge need of architects, probably. So, yeah.
Okay. Any other question?
Beautiful picture.
No? Okay, thank you very much. And so you can restart with your work in a workshop, and we will continue with the other conferences tomorrow. So thank you.